So this is all about a little story about building a replica Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and basically driving it right across the world to Australia because somebody said that we couldn't, so it sort of goaded us a bit. And one of the first questions that people ask us is why, which is a pretty fair sort of question. You know, why did you go and build a replica Chitty Chitty Bang Bang? And if I'm honest, I blame Carolyn, my wife. It's all her fault.
Thanks.
And I mean, what was the inspiration for it?
Gosh, where'd you start? A love of kit cars, a love of adventure, a love of just Dick Van Dyke.
I think that's the truth. You quite like Dick Van Dyke. For me, it sort of goes back to the fact that I knew Carolyn really loved the film, and that gave me loads of inspiration to go out and buy corgi model toys for birthday presents, Christmas presents, and books and memorabilia and all that sort of stuff. And to be honest, it was a lot cheaper than diamonds.
True.
So I sort of milked that for years and years. But so that was the inspiration. But I ended up taking you to the stage show up in London.
Yeah, that was good. Stage show, and then we saw it again at the Mayflower in Southampton.
Yeah, and I remember when I came home, you asked me a pretty important question. All right.
Can I have some kittens?
No, apart from that one, it was whether I could build the car, and I need to keep this in perspective. I'm not an engineer at all. Quite practical, but I'm definitely not an engineer. But as soon as you said, "Could I build the car?" I could instantly see how it could go together. I thought, well, if I got a frame, you could build something on this frame, and I could see it, and I started to do some sketches. And the truth is, I really didn't know whether I could actually pull it off and how good it would be. But that didn't matter. You'd set me a challenge of building something, which was fantastic. And I think it was you sowed the seed to go to Bewley, the auto jumble.
Yeah. The more seeds that were sown, the more time he spent in the garage for 4 years. It was great.
It was. I mean, the thing is, we went off to Bewley to go and see if we could find a chassis. Because I thought, if you had a chassis, like the frame that you build a car on, it would be easy to sort of start cobbling things together and put it into a bit of a sort of vintage car kind of look. So we went to Bewley, and they have this twice a year. They have this auto jumble, which is international. They have people from all over the world come. It's in 10 acres of field, isn't it?
Like that, yeah.
It's massive. But they have a car mart where people sell old vintage cars and wrecks and bits. But in there was the most perfect chassis you could imagine. It came from a La France, and I think it was 1900 something. I don't know. It was pretty old. But it was just a chassis. Nothing, no engine, no wheels, just a frame, and it was covered in rust. And it looked really ropey, but I thought, this is really quite big, and it's a solid chassis. And I thought, this is perfect. This will be perfect to build the car.
Had the old handbrake on the outside, which was like
that bit
a
is
chain.
still,
was it chain driven?
Yeah, that was still attached.
Yeah.
And I thought that would be perfect until we looked at the price tag. There's a little pencil price tag, and I turned it over, and it was £20,000, which actually was £19,900 over my budget because we had £100 in our back pocket.
Oh no, it was a bit much, but it was just so perfect.
So you have to ask yourself, if you're £100, how serious were you? And we were really deflated by this, and I actually thought, well, can we really pull this off? It's a big boys game, this really. Can we afford to do it? And we were a bit disheartened going home until we got on the ferry, and we got on the ferry back to the Isle of Wight, and I pulled up behind an old Land Rover. And what was funny about this was that I looked at it and thought, do you know what? That's the only car left on the road. Well, there's a few, but apart from most things, it's the only car left on the road that still had a chassis. And it was long and it was big, and I thought, they're two a penny, they're everywhere. That's perfect. Well, I said that to you, and you just...
A Land Rover? Get real.
So I remember you getting out and pacing yourself up alongside the
I did. It needed. I think it needed to be 17 feet. Was it?
yeah, it's about 16, 17 feet.
So I got to the back of the Land Rover and, like, literally foot by foot, I went alongside this Land Rover whilst we're on the ferry. And the chap still sat in the driver's seat, and he looks at me as if to say, "Is she mad?" But then we are going to the Isle of Wight, and
Yeah, poor old bloke's trying to get out his door to get up, stop for a cup of tea.
but do you know what? It was virtually the right length, probably half a foot too short.
Yeah,
but
it was
yeah.
spot on. So that sowed the seed, and we thought, we're going to go out and see if we can find just an old Land Rover, an old series Land Rover. They're two a penny. They don't cost much. And amazingly, that week in the Isle of Wight local paper, there was a Land Rover for sale.
Yeah.
For my budget of £100.
It was MOT failure.
Well, I had a week's MOT.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, because I had to drive it home.
Oh, all right. But yeah, we went to look at it down at St Helens, and it was pretty shoddy, but it worked. It drove.
Well, I remember driving it home, and the driver's door dropped off. I didn't need that. I didn't want that bit, but it was a bit like that.
Oh, yeah.
And anyway, we got it back, and the best thing about this was I spent the next, I don't know, couple of months stripping it down, taking everything off the car, and in doing so, I found £20 in pound coins, which was a real bonus, because 20 quid in pound coins meant that it only cost me 80 quid to buy it, and I also found a Yorkie bar.
But all the coins are just fallen down gaps in between the seats and under the floor mats, and some on the dashboard that dropped down into various compartments. They were just.
You'd never find it unless you actually stripped the whole vehicle down.
Yeah.
But I gave the Yorkie bar on this. It looked like it'd been there for a while. But so we stripped it right down to a chassis, and once we got it to a chassis, I just stood and looked at it for a long time, because it's just a Land Rover chassis. I had the engine still on it. I still had the wheels, and it's like, where do you start? We did lots of sketching. So I came into the house and got myself like a model of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I got a corgi model toy, and I held it out like artists with a pencil, And I thought, well, if I position it so that I can do the roof and the windscreen and the boat tail, and just scale it up. I thought, as long as it looks aesthetically right, that's the main thing. So I used that toy as a main sort of inspiration, really. But I couldn't find much online at all, or any plans or anything like that. So that's where we went with that. And it sat there for quite a while until my wife decided to have a barbecue.
Yes.
Yeah, well, you invited quite a few people over, didn't you?
I did, yeah. A few colleagues and people came along, and our barbecues normally start at lunchtime and finish 12 hours later. And after one or two wines, it seemed a good idea to announce what our plans were and open the garage doors up to show off, basically, what we were doing.
Well, I think after a few wines, you congured in. I literally congured into the garage, to explaining to everybody. You congured singing Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and explained to everybody that we're going to build a replica Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Well, you needed a bit of vision. You needed a lot of vision, because when they came in the garage, all you could see was a rusty old Land Rover chassis and four wheels, and I think we'd started painting some bit red.
Yeah, but didn't you have a whole load of electrics that looked like a box of spaghetti?
They were all hanging out, from where I kept all the electrics together from the dash and the ignition, and they were just all hanging down because I had nothing to sit on, and it went flat. People looked at it and thought, you're having a laugh. There's no way you're going to do this. And there was one particular guy, really nice bloke, but he was, a bit black and white, and he just said, you never do that. He says, I know the law, you won't do that. And now, I was a bit deflated, and I had done a lot of homework. I'd been on the DVLA site to see what you have to do to build a kit car. I'd looked at going through an SVA. It's a single vehicle approved test, which I knew probably wouldn't pass that. But I'd done a lot of homework, so I knew the law, and I knew that if you modified a vehicle, it was a bit easier than doing a kit car, and this was modifying a vehicle. But anyway, you needed some vision, and he looked at it and said, no. That's never. That's never going to happen. And I got really defiant, I guess, and I just said, you know what? When it's done, we'll prove it to you. and I said, we'll drive it somewhere very far. He looked at me and said, you won't get this out of Newchurch, mate. And I said, I'll tell you what, when it's done, we're going to drive it to Australia. And it just fell silent. And then I thought, what have I said? But do you know what? I'd set myself a really big challenge.
Even I thought, what have you said?
Drive to Australia in a car that we haven't even built. I mean, it was really putting us out there. But from that day onwards, and because you felt like nobody was on your side and a bit ridiculed and so on, it sort of goaded you to really pull out the stops and get motivated. So we shut the garage doors and we said nothing to anybody for my grammar inspector. We said nothing to anybody for 4 years, and we just beavered away. And I mean, it was a massive learning curve, you know. And I went out and talked to a lot of old engineers and welders and picked their brains and tried to get my head round various things. And we were off to Bewley quite a few times, didn't we?
Mm. Well, I mean, we didn't even have a garage to put it in to start with. We had like a little shed which Nick had built out of pallets. So he'd put 2 or 3 pallets high, and it's literally the width of the chassis. And he'd just got some old feather-edged timber and made a little roof. So every time we went to work on the chassis, we had to get the old car with the tow bar and pull it out of this makeshift shed, and then push it back in. And after we then thought, do you know what, this is going to be serious, we had to put in planning permission and build a workshop for it. So that sort of took precedence for a while, while we actually got something that we could work in and work around. Because in the winter time, oh God, it was cold.
Yeah, and although there wasn't a time scale, and it didn't matter whether it took 2 years or 5 years, it was just going to be finished when it was finished. But certainly having that workshop made a massive difference, because you know, it's warm, it had electricity, and you could do welding inside and all that sort of stuff. And I started really thinking that as long as it looks right, so I bought some steel from B&Q and things like that, and the first bit was I decided to roll. If you imagine the curve of the bonnet is round, so you have to get steel that goes through rollers, and these rollers, it's a bit like a mangle on a, you know, those old mangles that you put your washing through. So, but it's got 2 wheels down here and a wheel above, and you put the steel through, and depending how close these wheels are, it puts a curve on as you roll it through. So you sort of wind it through, and it puts a curve. But anyway, I had these bits of metal and I'd measured them right, and I thought, right, I can't do this, I haven't got rollers or anything like that. So I found a small engineering works in Newport, and I took them up there, and they sat there. They said they can do it for me, just roll them. It wouldn't take long. Literally, to put these through rollers would take 5 minutes. And they sat there for 3 months, 4 months, and every month I'd ring up and say, oh, have you done these little bits? And I'd made the fatal mistake of saying, building a replica Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and really I guess I lost my credibility. Thought you were completely bonkers. And after 6 months I rang up and said, look, have you done them yet? And the bloke just said, look, do you know how busy we are? And I said, oh, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll come and get them. So I went up, got the bits of metal. Clearly they hadn't done it. Well, that's fine. It is what it is. So, but it made me really defiant, and I thought, right, I'm gonna source some rollers. So I went down to the forge in Bonchurch, Graham Potter, lovely bloke, and I explained what I was going to do. I think he was a bit busy, but he just said to me, look, here's a little set of rollers. You can take them away. They put them on a vise and you can use them. So I took them away, and I put the metal through, and I think I messed the first bit up, and you know, it was a real learning curve. It went through, and it was a bit too tight, and then I had to use another bit of metal, but it wasn't too expensive. But eventually it started to take shape, and they went through, and they looked okay. And then I thought, I'm not going to ask anybody else. I'm going to have to do this. Well, we're going to have to do this ourselves. If we really want to do it, we've got to do it. So I went up to B&Q and bought a naff old welder, and messed loads of it up. I mean, it was real. I've got a friend who is a welder, and he just called it bubblegum welding because it was just splattered all over the place. But he gave me a few tips, and it started to take hold, and I started to get it together, and that was starting to, give you a bit of inspiration, really. And then, I mean, you started to think about leather and fabrics and...
Yeah, you said once you're starting to, it's taking shape, you start to think seat-wise, upholstery-wise, how the interior is going to look. And yeah, then...
Did a bit of research, really, online.
Yeah.
I brought a load of card home from Marks and Spencer's, and all this cardboard you have in the window, great big decor, but on the other side is it's a fine white card, so it's perfect for making templates. I mean, the fact that all the card I brought home, because at the time I was running ladies wear and lingerie, and so it was all full of boobs and bras and things like that, which you did question me, was that the only card I could get hold of, but anyway, it was. But it made brilliant templates, so you could actually cut out templates to go over the welded bits of metal to make a bonnet sort of shape. And once I'd made a template out of this lovely card and cut it out really finely, got it exactly how I want it, I took it to, there's a place down at Sandown Airport.
Yeah. Spitfires.
Yeah, that's right. They recondition Spitfire planes and make Spitfires, and they're called Airframe Assemblies. They're a fantastic place. Real niche business. Some real specialist people there. And I thought, well, I wonder if they've got big rollers that once I've made this template and I'd put the template on top of the aluminium that I bought. I think it was about 1.2 thickness aluminium, and I put the templates on top, cut it out, but then I needed that lovely curve, so they had to have to go through really big rollers. So I went down there one lunchtime and I just edged my bets, really, and knocked on the door. And there was only one guy there working, a really nice bloke, and I just said, I just wondered if I could borrow your rollers, really. And he said, what for? And I said, oh, well, I'm making a bonnet, and I didn't really want to say Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, but I'm making a bonnet, and I've got this aluminium, I just wondered if I could borrow them. And he said, yeah, it's fine, mate, yeah. It was a lunchtime. I said, they're over there, there'll be some. So I tipped over there, and I got to the rollers, and I'm trying to work out, well, I hadn't seen one like this before. Well, I hadn't seen one before at all. So I was putting the metal in. And then I was aware of a presence behind me, and this bloke had come up, and he leant over and he said, "You don't know what you're doing, do you?" And I said, "No, I don't." And he said, "Here, mate, look, you grab that end, I'll grab this end." And I've made a wooden template of the actual curve, so we knew how far it had to bend. And he put it in, he adjusted this, and I had one end and he had the other, and we rolled it through, and it came out perfectly with a lovely curve. And I did all the bits that I needed, which was a real bonus. So I'm really grateful to those people. I mean, that was spot on. And as it went on the vehicle, we were had a special compound that put it between the steel and the aluminium to stop it. You get electrolysis, which makes things like corrode quickly, so you have to put like a rubber sort of stuff on there. But I had a guy who told me exactly how to do it, which was really helpful. And then we had loads of bits. Been collecting loads of bits at Bewley. You had the lamps. The lamps
and a fuel tank we collected.
Well, that was a bargain of the century, that was.
Yeah. I'd gone round the different stalls, and seen this brass fuel tank, which was absolutely beautiful. And there was a chap and his wife running this stall, and I said, "Oh, how much is that?" And I think it was about £275. And I thought, "Well, that's a lot of money." So I sort of went away and told Nick that I found this fuel tank. And so anyway, lunchtime we popped back. Well, the chap had gone off for a coffee or something, and his wife was there. So I said to the lady, I said, "Oh, how much is your brass tank?" "Oh, I don't know," she says, £50. And I said, "I'll have it, thanks." Quickly gave her £50 and ran off. And of course, once he gets back, she says to her husband, "Oh, I've just sold that brass tank, and where he told me it was
Right, so it's
200 and something, I got it for 50, so that's a real bargain.
It was. I mean, that was one of the best buys, really, wasn't it? And the fact is that it was a period-made brass tank for fuel, which was absolutely perfect for what we wanted. Yeah. And we had
the windscreen was another.
Oh yeah, you did the windscreen.
Another windscreen. It was there was lots of windscreens there at Bewley, but they were all chrome edged, and I was adamant because of all the brass on Chitty, we needed a brass edged windscreen. Well, lo and behold, I came across this brass edged windscreen, which I think came off an old MG, did it?
Yeah, I think it was like an MGTC or something like that. It was quite an old.
Absolutely perfect, and the price on that was about $325, I think. And again, that's such a lot of money for a windscreen. And bearing in mind, we were just living on shirt buttons, basically.
And we'd only spent £100 on the vehicle, so we weren't that serious.
So to go and spend, £325 on this windscreen, but I didn't get them down too much. I think we probably paid about $300, but it was just the most perfect windscreen, and it was just one of those expenses that we had to have.
Well, we just had a garage of a Land Rover chassis painted red and a collection of brass bits.
Yeah.
Just sat around, and really, and the bonnet was taking shape, but really there was a lot of work to do. And but you could stand back and you could start to see. And one of the biggest turning points was the headlights, because you found a bucket of brass bits and bobs.
Yeah, there's lots of these. What are they called? The
Lucas King of the Road lamps.
Yeah, King of the Road lamps. There was loads and loads and loads of them for sale, and some of them are perfect, but happen. But if you go from stall to stall to stall, then you will find bits and pieces, and we would find part of one and part of another, and we started collecting them at sort of £20 a shot, £30 a shot, or you might find one that was perfect for what you wanted, but we needed two identical ones, so we'd spend the time going round, trying to match this particular one up, because there's so many different types, but they all look very similar.
Well, we had I know we bought one little set of side lights. It was like £100, but then we found another set that were beautiful for £400. So that was quite a lot of money to invest in at the time, but they were beautiful. But headlamps, they are astonishingly expensive, original. I've been quoted all sorts of prices, but at the time, back then, it was like about £3,000, £5,000 for these period beautiful big headlights, and it's just ridiculous. We couldn't afford anything like that. You might find something a bit more weathered for a lot less, might be £800-900, but even that was a lot of money. And then we found a bucket full of some main bodies of lamps, headlights, but no lens, no front bit, no bottom part, no back to them, and they were just like not unpolished. And we found two of them, and it was £20. Right, it was a real bargain. So I had to make the rest of the lamp, and I used Marks and Spencer's lampstand bases that were on. They were in the sale. These great big lampstand when they had these lovely brass bell housing parts, and they were £9 each. And they actually modified them into like the front of the headlights. I mean that was a real bonus. That panned out far better than we ever did. So it was made of all sorts of bits and bobs and collections and so on. And then we had to move on to the boat tail. And it was about building a frame, like making a frame that would bolt onto the chassis. Traditionally old cars are made out of ash wood and ashwood timber, and then you'd have like an aluminium skin, but we were going down the line of having an angle iron frame that would bolt to the original chassis mounting points, put ash wood over the top of that, and then put a Roco timber, which is used in the shipbuilding, boat building industry. It's a bit like a sort of tiki sort of kind of wood. It's lovely, which we managed to source at Clare Lallows in Cowes, but there's more to that. So it was about building this frame and putting the ash wood on there, and we really didn't know what we were doing. This was a massive learning curve, and to get the right timber, as I said, we went up to Clare Lallows in Cowes, and there's a great guy there called Rover, and I was trying to explain what I wanted without saying I'm building a replica Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, because I was a bit embarrassed about it. And he said, so what do you want? And I said, well, I need some timber for, I'm building a boat thing. Okay, you're building a boat thing. Are you building a boat? No, I'm not building a boat. It's a boat thing. Okay. So it's not a boat, but you're building a boat thing. Is it going in the water? Oh, no, it's not going in the water. But it's got to be waterproof. All right. So you're building a boat thing. It's not a boat. It's not going in the water, but it's got to be waterproof. Yeah. He said, look, you're not being very helpful here. And I said, oh, well, actually, I'm building a replica Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. There's a little pause. And then he said, well, why didn't you say so? This is what you need. And I'll tell you what, he was the most helpful bloke going. He went out, he said, this is the Iroko timber you need, this is the size you want it, here's the glue, here's the screws. And when I asked him, look, do I need to steam it? He said, probably not. So yeah, so it was all starting to come together, and we were doing the timber, and I mean, we had to cork inside the grooves, and then you put how many coats of varnish? 21 coats of varnish on there, sanded everyone back down, and then re-varnished. And then inside, to make it really strong, you did.
Yeah, it's fiberglassed it. So I've never done that before, but you just buy all these bits of what looks like matting, and then you mix up this resin, which smelt very strong, and you just build up layers, a bit like paper mache really, but it just sets rock hard.
Well, it certainly made the inside of that wood part incredibly strong.
Yeah, which was brilliant. And once that has then taken shape, you can then think, right, let's we need to make some seats here, and you start thinking about how they're going to be done, what sort of fabric you can use, what sort of foam you're going to use.
Well, we got that hide leather from Beauty Auto Jumble.
Yeah,
that was about 300 quid.
Yeah, but it was a really nice deep oxblood red, which is like you see the old Chesterfields, but superb. And what I learned is you can stretch it if you gradually shave the back of it.
It's called skiving.
Skiving, that's right.
Skiving off. Yeah. So like people used to skive off from work. Yeah. That's called skiving off. That's where it comes from.
So you make it slightly thinner, and you can then stretch it, and you can mould it and bend it, and again, the internet's a wonderful, wonderful thing for learning how to do stuff.
Well, you made all those Chesterfield button back red leather seats for Chitty, and you did a cracking job. Yeah. And I mean, and you put some, was it like that memory foam?
Memory foam on the front seat for us to sit on, and apparently it's the same sort of foam that they use in airlines for the pilots, because they're sat in their seat for X amount of hours, and it was supposed to be a very, very good foam, so I put that foam on the front seat.
And it was, I mean, really comfortable.
Yeah, very comfortable.
So they started to come together really, really well. But there was those are the bits of building the car that nobody else could do, and we had embraced and so on. And I always thought the mechanics of the car, because it's an old Land Rover, 1973, it's nearly 50 years old, we'd get somebody else to do that. I just wanted to invest our time in making Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and make it look beautiful and functional and so on. But the basic mechanics, you get a mechanic to do that. And one of the jobs I was hating was taking the old springs, the old leaf springs. It's the suspension, and there's shock absorbers and leaf springs, and they were rusted solid because like I say, it's nearly 50 years old. It's a right ropey thing, and they were just rusted on, and I just didn't like the idea of having to take these off and knock all the bushes out and the rubber. It was just a bit beyond me, really. So I jacked the car up, nice warm garage. I bought all the new leaf springs, parabolic springs they're called, new shock absorbers, and I rang up a friend who's a mechanic, and Richard, and he's called, anyway, he's an Indian chap, but he's a lovely guy. And I said, do you think you could change some shock absorbers on a Land Rover and leaf springs? And he said, oh God, that's a horrible job. Oh, I really don't want to do that. And I said, no, it's not a horrible job. It's okay. It's a nice warm garage. There's music. It's warm. The car's jacked up. There's all access to it. There's no body panels in the way. It's really easy. I've got all the new stuff. All the tools are there. You just got to turn up and do it. It won't be a problem. Anyway, so he agreed to do it. And the day he was about to come was a Wednesday, and I had a day off from work, and he didn't turn up. So I was really disappointed. So I rang him up and said, "Oh, I took the day off work and you didn't come." And he said, "Oh God, yeah, I'm sorry, mate. Yeah, I'll tell you what." He said, "I'll do. I can't do this next month. I'll come on a Wednesday." So anyway, made an arrangement. He didn't turn up. I was really gutted, mortified. We were still working on the car and so on, but this bit I really wanted to be done. So finally, we made another month later. I couldn't get the day off, but our son was here, Ben, and I said to Ben, because he was quite young then. How old was he? No, but he was at school. But he was at home. And I said, "Look, Ben, when Richard turns up," I said, "make him a cup of tea." I said, "You know, do anything. If he wants a sandwich, make him a sandwich. Look after him. Do whatever you want to do, and just let him in the garage and he'll get on with it." Well, halfway through the day, I get a phone call at work from Ben, who says, and I could see he's really sheepish. And I said, "What's the problem, Ben?" And he said, I said, "Did Richard turn up?" And he said, "Oh yeah, he did. He came." I said, "Brilliant. What's the problem?" He said, "Well, I went in the garage just to make sure that it was all okay, and when I came out, I locked the garage up, but I locked the keys in the garage and we couldn't get in, so he's gone away." So, with that, I did it myself, even though, and it was a horrible job and it took me ages, but I did it myself like everything else we had to do. So there was a real message there, which was quite funny really. But anyway, we went on to bits. We built the dashboard out of an old Victorian mirror, which I kept for years. The glass had gone, and we had this lovely carving that made into the glove box, and you put some varnish on it. The bonnet came together lovely, and I remember you spent hours
polishing it. Yeah, hours and hours. I had one of these little, I don't know, electric polisher, like a saucepan lid, really. 2 handles on it, and just polishing, and I used a thick cream.
Oh, is that like Autosol?
Autosol, yeah. And incredible how much black remember when you clean silver, your duster or whatever is black. Well, this was just black.
There was a bit of a disaster though, because you did a lot of the cleaning and preparing, and you wanted to clean the engine block up because it was really rusty and horrible, and it didn't look nice.
Oily and just mucky. So
and you had a wire brush thing on a cordless drill.
Well, I borrowed somebody's little handheld steamer to start with.
Oh, you steamed it?
Steamed it all to start with, got all the oil and stuff off, and once all the muck's gone, I think, well, that still looks a bit mucky.
Well, I said to you, I said, yeah, if you want to wire brush the engine with a cordless drill, I said, just be careful of all the electrics and the HT leads and all the wires that go around there to the distributor and so on. And that's fine, so I hear zzz, and all of a sudden I go around and look in the engine bay, and all the electrics and all the HT leads are all wrapped round the end of the drill. So it was a bit of a.
Yeah. The thing is, this thing had a mind of its own. You'd be doing and all of a sudden it would just shoot off sideways, and it just.
Yeah, it
was my fault.
Yeah, it was a good job.
It was alive.
You got there in the end. But anyway, the car started to come together, and we hadn't told anybody anything about it, and just as it was taking shape, I turned the electrics on just to test something. And when I came back, I'd gone to the workshop benches to get something. I came back and the whole lot caught fire. And I was devastated that all the wires had caught fire, and it was inflamed. It was only about this big, the flames and so on, but it was all the electrics was taking hold. And I was thinking, oh my God, it's going to burn the car down. But anyway, I quickly whipped the battery out, and I had some. Fortunately, I had some CO2 stuff, so I'd give that a good old spray and put the fire out. And I realised that I was relying on the electrics from 1973, so I went out, had to buy a brand new wiring loom and then reinstall that in the car, which was probably the best money we've ever spent, really, because it wasn't expensive, but you know, you learnt a big lesson there. And then I had this thing about what wheels was I going to put on Chitty, and you know, there was a moment where you realise that the wheels on Chitty Chitty Bang Bang are period spoked wheels, but actually on the film car they look period spoke wooden wheels, timber wheels, but they're cast. They've been cast, so they're actually an alloy, and then they put the period rubbers on them, the tyres. But from day one, we'd said that we were going to go off on an adventure in this car, and we were going to drive across the world, and we were going to go to Australia. And in our hearts, this is something that we were going to do. Although we'd announced that on our barbecue 4 years ago, we hadn't said anything else to anybody else. But in our minds, this is what we were going to do. And I thought, you know, those little wheels, are they going to be up to, you know, those rubbers? They're going to be up for it. But that really wasn't the clinching point for it. It was when we found a period wheel at Bewley, the auto jumper.
Yeah.
And you found it. It was like 15 quid.
Yeah,
It's a bargain.
yeah, the wheel was, yeah.
Absolute bargain. To find this old timber wheel, a period wheel. So we went to in Bewley, there's a tyre fitter, and we said, oh, can you get a rubber, you know, a wheel, rubber tyre to go on this? And the guy said, yeah, no problem at all. He said, you're going to be in for a shock though. And I said, right. He said, no, I'll just ask you, where did you get that wheel from? And I said, oh, over on a stall over there. He said, how much you pay for that? And I said, 15 quid. He said, you're a lucky bloke to get that. Very lucky. Now I'm going to tell you what a tyre's going to cost you.
Not so lucky.
Then, back in 2005,
6, something like that.
it was £750 for one tyre. That's what he quoted us. He said, what's it for? And I said, well, I said, it's an aesthetic looking spare. I said, it's not going to go on the road. He said, well, you're in luck. He said, because I've got a tyre with a broken bead. It will inflate, it will stay up. He said, but you can't really drive on it. He said, you can have it for 50 quid. Which was a bargain, because he fitted it onto the rim for us, and it looked stunning. So that really ticked the box, didn't it?
Yeah.
And then, we had a bit of a saga about wheels, didn't we? About what wheels to go for.
Oh, it was a problem because of the
Yeah,
did it have 5?
the stud pattern.
5, was it 5 or 4?
Yeah, so 5. It's 5 stud pattern.
But in theory, they're truck tyres, and trying to find a wheel that would fit onto the Land Rover that looked aesthetic, we had to go for a more of a truck wheel rather than a car wheel. Of course, a truck wheel is a great chunky, horrible thing that you think just.
Well, we were lucky. We found some Lexan tyres that had a road profile, so they weren't too whatever. And in the end, we found 4 wheels that were made, I think, for the British Army. They came from India. They're the Rally Raid Raid wheels.
Italy,
Yeah, from Italy.
Italy.
Yeah, but they were rally, and I know they've used them in like Paris-Dakar Rally, and they've used them in various things. They're really strong alloys, but they're spoked. They've got like a spoke look, and not perfect, but if you're going to drive across the world, they're perfect for that. And then there was just, you know, the car was coming together, and I thought, if we're going to go to Australia, maybe we should do this for charity. Maybe we should do give us a bit of a purpose, you know. And you chose some charities.
Yeah, we needed 3. I thought, you know, you're starting off local. We'll go 3 charities because it was a 1973 Land Rover. Everything had.
Well, the racing car in the film had a 3
had
on
a
it.
3 on it. Yeah, so 3 was our number basically. So we needed 3 charities. So we went for a local, a national, and an international charity. So the local one was our local hospice. The national one was the multiple sclerosis, and international was the World Wildlife Fund. So we thought, well, you know, that's 3 very different charities that people can, you know, support if they were kind enough to.
And it gave us a bit of a purpose. But you know, I was working at Marks and Spencer's, and I was a manager there, and we had a store manager, and the store manager was invited to a lunch, amazingly, with Prince Edward. And Prince Edward was on the Isle of Wight doing a charity event about restoring a church or something like that. But they invite local dignitaries and notable people, and so they invited the store manager of Marks and Spencer's. Well, he hates all that kind of stuff, and he just said, "You don't mind it, yeah, you can go." So I thought, well, you know, I'm going to go and have lunch with Prince Edward. Here's an opportunity to talk about it and maybe talk about charity. You know, I thought that'd be pretty cool. So I took some photos along with me of the Chitty sofa that we'd built. You know, a little script in my head about what I might say, and I put these photos inside my pocket of my suit. So I went out at lunchtime from work to go and have lunch with Prince Edward. So anyway, we're all hobnobbing and all talking and standing around in this like little reception area before dinner, lunch, and finally he works his way to me, and there's a couple of other people, the county press and a few other dignitaries and so on. And he starts talking about the media. I'm thinking, no, I don't want to talk about the media. I want to talk about charity. That's what you're here for. And I've got my charity photos. And he started talking about the media. And then finally, after about 20 minutes, he gets on to the charity that he's here for. And I thought, here's my moment. This is my moment to now plug my charity trip and what I'm building and so on. So I put my hand inside my pocket, and as I take the photos out, I've got in this hand I've got a glass of wine, and I put my other hand in taking. And as I take it out, I catch the cuff button on my suit on the top of my wine glass, and as I pull it across, the wine glass flicks back, and all this wine goes down the front of me and pools at the bottom. And I'm thinking, oh, for God's sake, what are you blooming idiot? And I look at the floor and I slide my foot over the wine, all panicky, and I look round thinking, who's seen me do this? And as I look up at Prince Edward, he says, "Well, nice talking to you, bye-bye." So, I blew it and I lost my moment.
And your wine.
And my wine. So, 4 years have gone by, and we're now at the stage where Chitty is coming together, and it's starting to look like it should. So we decided to have a launch party, and somebody had tipped off the local county press, and they wanted to come and do some photos about it. These crackpots who have built a Chitty Chitty Bang Bang replica and so on, and now they're going to claim to drive it across the world. But we had sort of set ourselves up for a bit of a fall, really, because we had a reasonably large garden, and we thought, well, we're going to build a stage, we're going to have some singers, and we're going to have some dancers, and we're going to make a bit of theatre, make a real drama out of this. And we learned to dance between us, the old bamboo, and with some other dancers. And we had a friend who sang posh and so on, and it was a song from the film. So we were going to really build it up and set the stage before we unveiled the car, really. And so we had 200 invites, and we had some parking arranged down by a garden centre and a minibus to bring them up, and it was a real lovely day. And it was the 7th of April, and the weather was
stunning. So warm, so sunny, not a cloud in the sky, not a puff of wind.
It was just perfect, wasn't it? Absolutely perfect. So we had this, made a stage and barriers around it so that all the guests could come and have a drink and something to eat and watch the show. So we put this show on, and it was lovely. It was just a lovely day. And then we went into the garage to open the garage doors, and I even had our nephews in aircraft handling fluorescent jackets and cut the bats like you are, to like bring a vehicle. Yeah, and we had loads of music and a thunder flash and all this sort of stuff. And we filled the garage with dry ice, smoke, and some lights beaming out, so that as the doors opened, you had this great big beam and smoke and so on. But what I didn't account for was the response of people. It was amazing. And it was because I think when we hadn't said much, and when we had talked about it, I think people, they sort of, I guess, humoured us a little bit, and you sort of smiled at you, probably thought you were a bit bonkers, and whether you could really do it. And I think they genuinely came to see a carnival float, maybe something made out of cardboard or something. I don't think they actually came to see a real car, that we'd built a real car. And when we drove it out, the sort of size and intake of breath and the round of applause, you sort of like felt yourself welling up a little bit. It was really emotional.
Yeah, it was very emotional.
And the response was cracking. And we had this real car. I mean, even had my brother who dressed up as a child catcher and went around scaring all the kids and so on. So we built it up lovely. And then when we came out, it was just an amazing moment. And to think that was a 1973 long wheelbase Land Rover.
Which people thought was going to be a carnival float.
Yeah. And now I had to stand up on stage and say, this is April. There's April the 7th, and in September we set a date. That's September the 12th. It's a Wednesday, and we're now going to drive this car overland all the way to Australia. And we'd really set ourselves up, and we still had so many things that we had to do, because we had kids who were at school, we had cats, we had a mortgage to pay. The car looked beautiful but had no MOT, wasn't taxed, wasn't been certified by DVLA to say that it was roadworthy and you were allowed to drive it on the road. It hadn't gone through any tests or anything, but we had this car that drove, but it only ran the garden.
And we both had jobs that we then had to think, we've got to get a career break.
Got to have a career break, and we're going to drive this car that we've done nothing to the engine. We've made it look beautiful. It looks Land Rover in drag. It looks wonderful. But we're going to drive it across the world, and I haven't even changed the oil. Don't even know what the state of the engine's like. So we're really up against it. And this is in April. We're going in September, so we've got 6 months to sort out visas, passports, and the most important thing about the whole lot was we had no money. The little money we had, we'd spent on making the car, and we had no money. And we'd really set ourselves up. But you're going to have to wait for part 2 to find out what happened.